Hi, everyone. Welcome to Cinema Spectacular 2021 Choice Cuts edition, the first in ever history. I'm your host tonight, Bryce Logan, hi, everyone. From the Let's Watch That Film Review podcast. I'm so excited to be here in my ever history house, just like everyone else in the entire world should be. And podcast. I thought I'd put on a collared shirt and just get this thing going. And we have some fantastic films that were screened tonight, ones that have come out over the years through Cinema Spectacular. And we have some of the filmmakers here today to talk about them. We got Daniel Ryan Jeffrey from the director of Sad Hill with Sad Hill, Nathan Douglas with Sun in the Barbershop, Kelly Tatham, thank you, with Multiverse Dating for Beginners, and Joel Salaysay for Last Night. They're all here today. How are you guys all doing? Tatham. Thank you. It's all just going to be quite, lots of thank you. And thank you. For last, be patient with me. It's my very first time hosting in a digital setting. Normally I record digitally, but you can edit and you can do different things to make yourself sound better. Thank you. Which I don't necessarily do, but I never listen to my episodes. So in my opinion, they're always just completely golden as soon as they go out digitally. But how are you guys all doing to make yourself looking back on your films? Have you guys sat down and you watched them all again? And I just wanted to kind of go through and for all of you, Nathan, yours is the oldest film on the block. How does it feel looking back on your movie now, having it be 5 years later?
It's definitely a process of realizing how much time has gone past.
How does it feel looking back on your movie
the film
now,
having it? I think about how much the film meant to me making it. It was my first short film that I got to make after film school, and it was a big kind of a chance to really. I think about how to reset and get out there and start making first films in a different context, and so then to see all the time that has gone past. And it's surreal, I guess. And also, you still notice new things. So, I did actually notice something just fine, which I've never noticed before. I've seen the film hundreds of times, which is there is actually a time boom in frame.
Oh, no way.
It took me 7 years. 7 years to see, but it's there, and I love it. And I'm not going to ask Daniel. I'm not going to ask you who did that, but it's a beautiful Easter egg.
So, Daniel, you worked on the film?
Coincidentally, I was the boom operator. Well, me and Vlad, two guys. We had two booms going, but they were locked off. We weren't.
Daniel, you worked on.
They were on C-stands. So we really effed up then if they were in the frame because we weren't even boom guys. We had two booms.
That's interesting. Did any of you also, upon rewatching your films, if you did, you can be honest and say, you know what, I've seen this thing 1,000 times. I'm not going to watch it again. But is there anything that you pulled from this experience, like Nathan, when you watched it? Joel, Kelly, or Daniel? Daniel's is a little bit of a different experience. That must have just you putting yourself back into that time period of being in that experience and everything. But Joel or Kelly, was it interesting to rewatch? Did you guys nitpick a little bit more this time around? Is it hard? I'll go with Kelly first.
Sure. Oh gosh. Nitpick everything, it's never quite what you see in your head. So for me, it was painful to watch for a really long time. And now it's been long enough where I think I can look at it and go I kind of forgot exactly what I wanted to hit. And now I just know this version. But yeah, there's one shot where our tent and our crafty is in the background. But
no.
It happens pretty quickly, but I'm oh, there it is. And the wonderful editor, Matt Sawatsky, was don't worry, people won't notice. Because I was in there just being such a director, this little thing. And that loses focus at the end. He's it's fine. No one's going to notice. And they don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Joel, how about you?
Yeah, I find all my nitpicking comes probably in the initial viewings, and then if I stay away from it for a few years, then that's when I can kind of enjoy it as a movie again. So, yeah, it's kind of nice to revisit something.
It's easy to separate yourself from it a little bit more, right? Daniel, how about you? Going back to your film, being as that you guys traveled out there and everything. I know that the film was a big deal for your Devin and I'm sorry I forgot his name. The other guy.
Will.
I know it was like huge for them. I know it was big for you too. But like going back and looking at it, does it change anything? Like, do you have any memories that pop up? Do you things come up in your mind that you're like, God, I wish we would have gotten this shot a little bit different or ever?
Yeah, I mean, it had been a few years since I'd watched it in full, and so like today I was watching it and forgot a lot of stuff about it, and so I was like, usually I don't like laugh at, but I feel like I'm not even laughing at my own film. I'm mostly laughing with and at ourselves in it. The time that passed, yeah, it's interesting now because we really got lucky when we were in there. It had been like basically untouched since it was filmed there, minus the like little fan touches and stuff, but shortly after we filmed that, like within the year, there was this huge restoration effort and like got overhauled by like this whole community of people. And now it's been like restored with like stones. It's like been restored to look as close to the film as possible. So we were worried.
Really?
We were worried at the end of this film that like, this land would go away or get like demolished or something, or I don't know what we thought it would deteriorate, but it's actually the opposite. It's since there's been a huge resurgence of like interest and it's back in like the public sphere and people visit it and stuff.
It's funny. We got questions coming through from the moderator, Jess, from one of the co-founders of the Cinema Spectacular. She's going to be feeding me some questions to ask you guys. But also just from my own experience in covering the good, the bad, and the ugly on my own podcast. If you listen to that episode of my show, God, now I realize this feels like a shameless self-plug, which I did not mean it to be at all. But the entire episode, we don't even really talk about the movie because it's one of those movies. It's like, just go watch it. It's really good. PG, keep it PG, folks. It's really freaking good. And just go watch it. So it's one of those films that I think is like very much ingrained in film culture. And it's so like, as being a film nerd myself, seeing yours, I was just like, oh my God, that's just so cool. Like there was a line where it's like going to Disneyland and there's no lines. It's like, oh yeah, exactly. That's what it is. So just coming through while we're talking to you, Daniel, the first couple of questions that came through on the chat are, what gear did you bring on the trip and how long did the reenactment take to film? And I feel like those kind of help each other out, actually, from what you've answered in other questions.
Yeah, I mean, while the reason we were in Spain at the time was we were doing the Camino de Santiago. So we were doing this long pilgrimage for like 4 weeks, and we knew we had a day where we could taxi like 80 kilometers out to this random like field out in like a farm area, small town area. And we only had the gear that we could carry on this pilgrimage. So we didn't have a lot of stuff. Our tripod was like, if you see it, it's like this little mini travel photography tripod, and it only goes up like 4 feet or maybe 5 feet. So that was why we were having to like squat. And gear, like we all had our own cameras, but they're all disparate cameras. I had like a 4K handy cam, and Devin had, I think it was a GH4 was our like main like pretty camera, which shot in 4K. And then
humble brag.
Yeah. and then I don't think Will was filming it. I don't think we filmed anything for this on his, we had a DSLR, like a 60D, but yeah, those are the two main cameras we had. And it only took us like, I don't know, I think like 4 hours maybe, because they had like painstakingly shot listed everything, like, and knew exactly how they were going to do it prior to showing up. So it was pretty quick.
You get the vibe in the movie that those guys have been thinking about this in their sleep for a really long time, and they were ready for it if the opportunity were to arise. And I get the feeling, did you guys practice it before going?
I never did, but Devin he recreated it in high school, like in his high school, like film class there. So he has like, I think at least a couple versions of this recreation. So it's very burnt in. Yeah,
exactly. It's awesome. Just going down the list of questions here, Joel, I had some questions for you actually about the cinematography in your film. It's pretty breathtaking, honestly. At the time, what was the inspiration behind the cinematography on your film? Because it's got like this neo-noir element to it, and you're very much just like showcasing Vancouver to the world in which we all see it as, just like rain and darkness and everything, but it's actually very beautiful, and the horses and everything. So like, one of the questions that just came through, why did you choose to shoot in black and white? Or was that something that you chose before going into it? Or was that kind of like, just talk about that if you can.
When we were looking for locations, one place that we knew we could definitely have access to be like the main living space for the lead character was a friend of mine's basement, and the walls were neon green. And we were just like, okay, well, we know we can get this location if we need it. But the green's not going to work. So what can we do? And that was when we first kind of talked about maybe shooting it in black and white. We wound up not shooting in that area, but once we kind of got that idea in our heads, it was kind of, it was just, we wanted to go that way. And once we committed to that, I guess I knew with my cinematographer, Erlen Barrett, we didn't want to, we didn't want it to be like a half measure. We wanted to go full on like high contrast, noir aesthetic. We incidentally shot it on a GH4.
Okay.
Used a very fast set of lenses, and in the words of Erlen, stupidly underlit for basically all of the movie. It was very, very low f-stop. Which obviously came in handy when you're shooting in a forest and there are virtually no lights anywhere. So it was but it adds to it in the end. Like all of your decisions, albeit not what you wanted in the moment, you guys made them work so well, and it's awesome. So just staying on last night, I got questions here for you, Nathan, and I've got questions myself for you, Kelly. But I just wanted to go into while we're talking to you, Joel. How did you get the horse footage? I mean, that's just a basic question that's on here. Yeah.
I'm assuming you knew somebody who had a horse and you guys were like, I want to shoot that. But
yeah, it was the Facebook hive mind, right? So put it out there, asked a bunch of friends, and there were a couple of different options. There was a horse named Vito in North Vancouver, who was the initial selection, who wound up getting cut. We wound up
just
going
too lewd or something, or
we wound up because another friend of ours had not just the horse, but kind of the property that we were able to shoot in I think it's Maple Ridge, Abbotsford. I can't remember anymore, but he had a couple of horses, and we went out there and shot it late at night.
Huh. There you go. The sun was going down, got some horse footage. There you go. Now you got that in your back pocket forever.
Yeah.
That's something that's very valuable. I think that people that aren't in film don't realize how valuable horse footage actually is. Like actually good. Like the movie The Nest that's just coming out now. The movie's got tons of horses in it. Footage is fantastic. If they only had it already. Kelly. Oh, there she is. I just had a question while I was watching your film. I was like, man, she must have been pissed off when she saw Palm Springs. Have you seen Palm Springs?
I can't remember. Maybe.
The Andy Samberg. I'm not here to plug gigantic films, but it's like you have this Groundhog Day element to your movie, obviously the multiverse element, but Palm Springs is very much a retelling of like a love story element through the same sort of thing that you were doing, but you did it before them. And I was just going to say, how much of an inspiration of like Groundhog Day, I can't believe it escaped me, Groundhog Day was an inspiration to you or that kind of thing? Or was that not even in your mind at all when you made your movie?
There's actually this play called Sure Thing by David Ives, who's a short playwright out of New York. And I directed that play in high school, and it was this back and forth between two people at a coffee shop. And each time one of them got it wrong, a bell would ring and they would try again, and it would kind of go back to the beginning. And so the characters are Dave and Ivy after the playwright David Ives. And that's like, it's a whole subgenre, right? The parallel universe romance. Like when you start looking into it, there's tons of films that explore this, because like what else are we left with at the end of a relationship other than what if?
Exactly.
What if differently? So it completely like lends itself to the parallel universes.
No, for sure. And like, I was just watching it and I was like, oh, okay, Multiverse. Like I'd known the title obviously because I can read, which is nice. But and then I'd never seen the film, and I was watching, oh, this is delightful. Oh, it's doing what Palm Springs did. And then I immediately was like, no, Bryce, they did this before that. And but it's doing what all these other, like, you have such a good hold on the genre in your film. Yeah. And I think it's so well done with the gimmick of the scarf. Like, where did that come from for you? Like, where was that? Was just like, this is something that I need to like go through with it, or how did that come about?
So it's interesting. The scarf was written in, but it wasn't controlling the changes. It was just it was a plot piece that was how he went after her. And then the changes in the first draft, she like would scream. That's what was triggering it.
Fair.
And then I sent it to, I think it was my friend Miranda from film school, and she was like, she's like a very fantasy writer, and was like parsing like, okay, but how does this work logistically? And like, how do you, like very like technical questions about the fantasy elements. And that's when, and then I think probably with Sasha, who produced it as well, it came out of like the question of like, it's already there, use this. And so it had been written in without me knowing that that's what it was going to be.
And so that's good. That's one of those little happy little, that's like knowing somebody owns a horse, that it's like, that's going to work out for you in the future when you're like, oh, okay, that works. So one of the questions that just came through is like, how has your attitude changed towards the multiverse film now in present day and everything versus when you made the movie?
When I made the movie, I was just so grateful that it happened, that we were able to pull it off. And I think definitely like wishing I had met my expectations in my head. And now I just look back and I'm still grateful that it happened. And yeah, I think it's honest to the moment. I look back and I go like, oh, I wouldn't say that now, or I don't believe that now, or like that part isn't quite true, but like it was all honest in the moment. And I'm grateful that I was able to express like, and paint a picture of where I was at that time. For sure.
No, that's awesome. And like, I'm sure you've talked about the inspirations for that film till the cows come home, and we will like, has your inspirations of that film, do you look back on that and go like, you could have done more? Or do you look at your final product and kind of go like, do you see the flaws like we've talked about with Daniel and Joel and Nathan, just about like watching your old versions of it and stuff? Like, do you see things that you wish you would have changed? Like if you were to make the movie today, I guess is what I'm saying. Do you see things that you would do differently or what?
Oh yeah. I think it mostly came down to like lighting choices and not having enough takes to, because there's a lot of long takes in there. And so we were on a really tight time frame. And we only had 2 nights to film, and we were only supposed to be in the park till like midnight on the permit. And I was like, ooh, we were pushing it. So like just having more time to be able to set up those shots and to get the performances that we got in rehearsal. And yeah, just more wherewithal for myself of like how much of the lighting is going to be baked into the shot and versus like the color that I wanted to achieve in post. And it was a big learning experience for me, and made me realize how much more I had to get technical with like the understanding of cameras and lenses and that knowledge. And
so I've got a question here for Son in the Barbershop, Nathan, but I just have a question for all of you now as well. So seeing you guys have, some of you are now working on your first features, and you're now going to longer format, and now you've gone from film school, you've gone out and you've worked on commercial projects and stuff like that. I just want to know, I can maybe start with you, Nathan. How do you feel about the short film format, and how do you think about yourself working with it in the future? Do you feel like you're always going to have a connection to the short film format, or are you kind of ready to kind of take the next leap up to like feature film or something along those lines? Are you ready with that? Or how do you feel about short film now that you've been away from it, or that's how kind of you began?
Yeah. I mean, I think back to when I was in school, and kind of the classic problem when you're a film student is that you want all your short film ideas or feature ideas that, end up just bursting out of the short format. And what I found is once I kind of tried that, and you know, some things worked and a lot of things didn't, and then came back to the drawing board with you know, after going to film school and realizing that there were some stories I wanted to tell that were in a very contained setting, usually, you know, that are more suitable for a short format. And so it was a lot, you know, I'd say I spent the last several years kind of just playing through different concepts that would present themselves, and you go, is this a short? Is this a feature? You just kind of feel it out. And the ones that were definitely that definitely wanted to be shorts, you know, those are what I moved forward with. And I don't think I did feel ready to pursue, like, you know, making a feature film until in the last couple of years. Like, I definitely have reached a place where I'm like, okay, I feel confident enough in my craft and my ability to like do something over that amount of time, but it's still incredibly intimidating and daunting to think about. I would just want to make a quick plug for what we would call, like, because we have this dichotomy of short films, feature films, and in the distribution world, that tends to be like films under 30 minutes and films roughly over 70 to 80 minutes. And there's this like middle ground that I think a lot of filmmakers are kind of exploring these days that like it needs to get more attention. And you know, I would love to see the landscape of the 30 to 60-minute film kind of become something that becomes more normalized for audiences and filmmakers, because there's a lot you can do within the mid-length film that you can't do in a longer or a shorter film. So it'd be great to see that like all open up. Yeah.
I 100% agree with you there. I'm very much in the camp of when I'm seeing new movies come out or anything, I'm like, oh, it's 88 minutes, sign me up. But like, if this thing was an hour, and then you watch the 88-minute movie, you're like, wow, you could cut 20 minutes out of this movie. And it's just like, there is this tendency to want to stretch out or want to shorten things way too early on in the film. And I agree that there needs to be more of kind of a gelling vibe for that kind of period. But yeah. Joel, Daniel, Kelly, any of you want to speak up first about how do you guys feel about working in the short genre nowadays as opposed to when you started? I'm going to start with Joel. He looks like he's ready to talk.
I was leaving the floor open for Daniel to start, but no, I've been working in TV the last few years, either 11-minute shows or 22-minute shows, and sometimes the number of stories you have to tell, it's 56 11-minute episodes in a single year. And, you come to certain stories where you're just kind of like, okay, this is just kind of clearly filler. I don't really know what it has to do with anything. So what's nice about just kind of working in the short format, and what I enjoy about it anytime I revisit it is, everything is just invested into that single, 10 to 15 minutes, and that's it. That's your story. So yeah, all of your whatever thoughts, whatever spark, or whatever emotions you had going into it, all of it is poured into that self-contained story.
There's something to be said for having all your eggs in that one basket, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's like, have you learned anything from working in TV and being in that? Because that's kind of like your 30 to 40-minute short film kind of element. But like Nathan is talking about, have you learned anything from that you've wanted to take to your own screenwriting process and stuff?
I don't know, really.
You can also say no. Like, that's totally fine. If my question's bad, you can say no, and then we'll just like hard cut and we'll move to Daniel. But I don't want to put you on the spot.
I think they're just they're completely different mediums, right?
100%.
One is the long form serialized episode to episode sort of thing, and they're just two different animals. Yeah,
for sure. Daniel, how do you feel about the short film genre?
Yeah, so far, I mean, it's the only thing I've endeavored to do. I work in both documentary and fiction, mostly documentary, but I can honestly say I personally have not yet felt inspired enough with any idea that I have wanted to make a feature necessarily out of it at this point. So shorts have been my preference, but
even in doc? Sorry to interrupt you, but even in doc?
Well, I was just going to say, if I were to break into a feature, I think it would probably be hopefully a documentary, something that would sustain my interest for that amount of time. But in doc especially, I think has a really juicy time zone between, you could do a 30-hour doc. That could be really great. I think people are more open to that than 30-hour long features for some reason, just because of, I don't know, how things have been.
Streaming service, TV shows coming out with like television shows. Like, you want to hear about, drug pushing for 40 minutes, not an hour. That's too much. I just need enough to be able to eat food and somewhat digest it, and then I can move on. Like, that is kind of the medium. But I'm surprised that. So, like, is there, when it comes to the documentary area of short, what was the hardest part for you when making like a short documentary? Is knowing when to stop? Is that like the hardest part?
Maybe, yeah. Even watching, I mean, when you edit, especially documentary, because it's not like you're going off a script. It can kind of balloon to being any kind of length. So like usually they start out quite long, and like I remember a lot of it with this one, I was just culling back. Like I just putting in too many jokes, or what I thought were jokes. And then even this time watching, I was like, I could cut a good minute or maybe two out of this now. Like, I'd be satisfied. Like, I could say goodbye. Like, there's things I was like, those things don't need to be in there. They're not as essential. So I guess just getting the perspective on that. But
for sure,
sometimes you just only have so much material. In this case, like I don't know, I couldn't have made it too much longer. People have said to me with this one, they're like, oh, why didn't you show the whole sequence? But the sequence is like 6 minutes long, so to just slap that in, it would be like most of the film suddenly, which is odd. So
it would be a huge chunk, that's almost like a special features for the thing, right? And just like let that whole thing play out. But it's awesome. Kelly, how about you?
What do I think about shorts now?
Yeah, what do you think about working in shorts now? Because I think we all agree that shorts are great. Because we don't want anyone to be like, I think shorts are bad. We shouldn't do shorts. This is the wrong festival. I should not be hosting this thing. What am I doing wrong? But like, Kelly, what do you think about like working in shorts and like producing art through shorts for yourself nowadays?
I haven't personally, like, I've definitely entertained the idea of doing another short, but there hasn't been anything that's sparked for me. I have been trying to write a feature that's like in the vein of Multiverse. I kind of stopped trying. I was trying pretty hard for a couple of years. I've got like a dozen mostly finished drafts of like variations of twisty timelines in the Multiverse. So I don't know. I think generally it's such an incredible art form and such an accessible thing for people to put their message and their vision out there. And but I was talking with Sasha, who produced the film, and how like I did spend like a year touring it, and like how much time went into this little 13-minute thing. And that's kind of like astronomical to think of. And so I think for me, it has to be something that's just so important and necessary and urgent. But I also recognize that it's like such an accessible art form that people can play and create and put all sorts of different projects out there without having to put too much effort into it. So it can be whatever you make of it.
That's very true. Just real quick to go around, how many days total did it take each one of you to finish, to get somewhat of a final cut for your projects? Just so people have an understanding. It's like, oh, it's only a 10-minute movie. How long could it take? How long did it take you guys? Each one. Let's start with Nathan. How long? Not to your final, because I'm going to talk to you about that in the question I have here. But like, when you were done.
I mean, technically, it took one day because we shot the film in one. Like, it was a one-take film. So, but I mean, I would say it took maybe at most a month or two to go through all the takes and pick the one that I liked the most. Yeah,
Joel.
I think we shot it in October and we were finished by January. So. Yeah, I guess maybe 2 months 3 months of editing.
2 or 3 months. Yeah. Daniel, minus travel time, what was yours?
About 16 days and 4 hours, I think, was our total.
Damn,
I
man.
I honestly don't know. Because I was just, I have no idea. It was like a passion project. So I was just editing it. And I think it was late because we were editing this feature before we even touched this short. So I didn't even look at the footage for a long time. But it took, I would say, weeks of me trying and playing and before it shaped into anything that I thought was a good movie.
Fair. Kelly?
We edited for weeks. Post was pretty fast. I was trying to hit some festival submission deadlines, which word to the wise, if don't try and hit it, you'll hit it next year. Don't rush. Like
100%.
Premiere, move along.
Yes.
You might. All the power to you. Just follow your heart. But we rushed through post, but it was still weeks and weeks of sitting and editing through and trying to make it work.
That's fair. Yeah, folks, if you're watching this right now, short films do not take short amount of time to make. They take a long time. And if they do, like if you're lucky as Nathan, just being able to sit down and be able to shoot it all in one day, there's so many more elements that come into play, in which leads me, I'm a perfect segue artist, into my questions that I got here. So Son of the Barbershop, the BB Shop, which is coming through the chat here. When it came to the actors interacting with each other, was the older man on the phone with somebody? How did they get the timing right? I'm assuming he was talking to you.
No, actually. So, yeah, so shout out to...
I owe you $20, Laurel. Sorry.
Shout out to our two actors, Danat, who played the boy, and Michael, who played the father. So Michael was on the phone, but he wasn't actually talking to anybody. He was basically listening. So he and Danat were playing off each other, and we rehearsed that a lot. It was basically just rehearsal. I forget how many sessions we did. No more than 3. It was 2 to 3, but they got it right away. Pretty much, like it was just a matter of kind of fine tuning the timing, and yeah, like their job was to play off each other without seeming like it, which I'm sure is not easy. So yeah.
No, yeah, they definitely have this weird resemblance and rapport between the two of them. When I was watching it, I was going like, yeah, the casting is really well done for the two of them for sure. And somebody here has a question. The audio is amazing. How do you do the sound design? It is an incredible layering of audible stuff from like all of your stuff, like the scissors and the water bottle in the background, all that stuff. How many mic / boom ops did you have? Well, we have Daniel, and then who else? Was that just Daniel?
No, we had 2 boom ops. We had Daniel and Vlad Fladulov.
Vlad.
Yeah, everyone knows Vlad. Shout out Vlad. So yeah,
everyone knows of Vlad.
We had 2 boom ops. So basically, one was on the foreground with Danat, and one was on the background with Michael, the father. I believe that's how we did it. But then when we got into post with the sound design, it was a matter of basically because the film was one shot, everything like. Since we weren't going to be editing picture, it was going to be how do we use the sound to massage certain beats to, I mean, most of the beats are there in the back and forth in the dialogue and what's going on between them. But it became pretty clear very quickly that with the sound, we can definitely do a lot here to edit the emotional nature of the film through the detailing, just adding little things here and there. And also, but also like layering. For me, one of the most important things about the project was the space of the barbershop itself, and that it is this very, very rich sonic space. You know, there's conversations, there's music, everything in the film. There's all this stuff happening that's always kind of just in the background. Sometimes you notice it, sometimes you don't. But because I had the original idea for the film while I was getting my haircut, and I was pretty upset that day and feeling pretty isolated and disconnected from the people around me. You know, that's what ended up, the direction we ended up going with the film was to kind of capture that because, you know, in that moment, all this stuff is happening around you, but you're not really connected to it. So it became a matter of layering in until we kind of had like a full world there, which was a lot of fun to do for sure. So.
No, it's awesome. Yeah, I think that it's interesting that you guys kind of did ASMR before it was like super popular. It's like I very much got the vibes of like, wow, I'm watching this with my headphones. Yeah, just like the snip, 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 snip. And like the Croatian, was it Russian or Croatian?
It's actually, I believe it is, so that most of the people who work at that barbershop are they're Assyrian. And I believe they speak a modern version of Aramaic.
So I'm like way off, and I apologize about that. Yeah, I just want to be clear about that.
No worries. But I was going to say with putting the sound details in, that was one whole thing, and then I work with Will Ross, sound designer and sound mixer. We've done a bunch of films. Actually, we've already talked about him here in this chat. But anyway, it was a whole other process to kind of take the layering and then to mix it. I just want to shout out Will, because that was the moment when the film really went from kind of just like clumps of material to like something, integral. Yeah.
No, it's a huge element of your movie, and I think it really helps it out. It's great. I've been told by people that are watching my stream to stop rubbing my mustache. I will touch my mustache as much as I like. Thank you very much. I'm very proud of it. I'm blonde. It's very hard to grow. Now let's go on to the next question here. So this is for all of you. Like, how do you guys see streaming affecting short films? Do you see it as a possible avenue for shorts, basically the length of an episode of television, like we've been talking about? To add to that, have any of you been approached by a streaming platform or approached one yourself about like showcasing any of your work or one of the shorts that we've shown here today? And just to kind of change up the order of things here, Kelly, I'm going to start with you. How do you feel about streaming and short films, and have you broached that topic in your mind when it comes to going forward or in life, obviously?
Yeah. Multiverse is on YouTube on a platform called Dust, which has been really great. It's got tons of views, which I never thought that the film would have that many views or that so many people would see it. That just like wasn't in my notion when I was creating it. And so I've been really grateful for that. And it's on the Fantasy Network as well. And like some other platform that keeps saying that they're going to give me money because they're going to like play in South Korea or whatever. I just keep signing these documents and like, sure, I don't know. Like,
I love just signing documents with the hope of getting money. It's exactly what my parents taught me to do. That's good.
Yeah. And so, it's awesome. It's great. It does feel like things are becoming more democratic, just in terms of like, it doesn't have to conform to like television or film, like some other people are mentioning. And it seems like there continues to be a hunger for content, like a bottomless hunger. So having those platforms that do stream shorter projects is awesome. I'm just so grateful that people are out there consuming that content.
It's kind of like the time for, like, think about COVID and quarantine, and like everyone is like you said, there's like this constant need for content. It is kind of like a great time to showcase a lot of short films, like to watch a lot more short films. Like, I know the Oscars are kind of crap for the most part, but at the same time, it's kind of nice that a lot of the short films are able to be watched on streaming services and stuff this time around, and being able to like stream things on Vimeo with smart TVs and all of that kind of stuff. It's really opened up a lot more of that element. Let's go to you, Daniel, next. How do you feel about streaming, and what is your whole experience with it so far?
I don't have much experience. I mean, most things I've made, I eventually just throw up on YouTube, on my own personal YouTube, and doesn't necessarily garner a huge ton of views. This one got, because we also posted our full recreation, so that got put onto Reddit at some point, and like that video kind of semi blew up, and then like supporting was this short film tagged onto it, so it got some viewership through that. I love watching. This year I've watched probably more short films online than ever in my entire life, because I've been just tuning into a bunch of film festivals and watching from home, and it's really nice. But it is interesting. I would say general audiences don't typically seem to go out of their way to see short films, generally, I would say. Yeah. So like, but I think it would be, I know I have never checked them out, but I know like Amazon Prime has a big selection of shorts, but that would be cool to see in a more accessible way. I don't know if Netflix will ever consider doing something like that, but especially with like, content is, I mean, you would think that short films would work their way into, even just from a marketing perspective, just like people like to throw things on, and you would think, I mean, that's kind of a sad way to watch people's short films, but you would think
I'm just going to cook dinner and then I'm just going to watch this intense short film. It's not going to work.
I don't know. I don't have any hopes or smart things to say about it. I'm not sure. I'm curious myself. I'm very curious what will happen.
But you brought up Reddit. Like, that's definitely another avenue that a lot of people don't talk about when it comes to showcasing their films. Like we're always kind of just hyper focused on YouTube and Vimeo, or God, if I could sign a contract deal with Netflix and get my short film on there, because yeah, Netflix, Prime, Amazon, like they're the same thing. They have that kind of element, but they're doing that to try to get audience awards kind of participation and stuff like that. But Reddit is kind of like this weird deep-seated area that stuff can be released and things can be seen and can be linked back to your Vimeos, to your YouTubes and stuff like that. And so, yeah, of course, like it's great to hear that your short film and all of your other stuff kind of got kind of glumped. I'm going to call it that. Yeah. Glumped together on Reddit, which is a good way of doing it. Nathan, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I go back and forth on this because I think like it really matters to have a culture that is, you know, interested in short filmmaking and watching shorts. And like, you don't, in the North American context, you definitely don't see that. Shorts are seen as a means to an end, a means to just kind of building like, you know, your larger career in features. Whereas in other contexts, especially like in Europe, then you really see there is an actual like culture there that average people, quote unquote, are happy or, you know, will go to a short film festival and they will watch short films. So I think there's a lot of work that has to be done culturally to kind of like build that up. But I think that is happening too. We do see that in online spaces happening more and more. So
you sorry to interrupt you there. You talked about in your write-up on Cinema Spectacular when we asked you like a questionnaire. I say we, the royal we. I didn't write it, but you talked about taking the film to a short film festival, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Over in Europe, and it was a very much a different experience.
It was this night and day, like in the sense that here you show a short film at a festival, even like the Vancouver International Film Festival, which is, you know, a big cultural event in this city. But you know, if you're shooting a short film, most of the people who are going to be there are probably going to be people that you personally know or have invited. And whereas, you know, over there, it was basically thousands of strangers at this particular festival that were watching everyone's work. And it was like, as I mentioned in my write-up, like the schools were kind of closed for the week. So, you know, families were going out, and that was the thing. Everyone for a week just goes to the short film festival.
It's like Christmas, and you just go see short films.
That's one particular festival that has built that up very, very strongly as their thing. I'm not saying that's the same for all short film festivals, but I do think in general, sort of like the European temperament or whatever is way more open to short films being something that is, is valuable in and of itself. It's not simply a career stepping stone. It's a thing that's worth pursuing for itself.
Well, it's more natural from the history of film over there in Europe too, right? Like just like it just kind of progressing its way over there, being much shorter film. Like people used to go, just getting it all together, and just there's been so much more like the whole artistic element of like putting an art film together. They're way more prominent over in Europe and by prominent, I mean not that they're in numbers, they're not the same element, like same amount here, but over there, they're just like kind of more ingrained in the cultural aspect of art films. Are just, that's what we do here. We make art films, and that's kind of normal, and that's just kind of how it goes. And so art films, you know, you don't normally see many of them that are over 15 minutes unless the whole art element of it just like, let's make this thing fucking 5 hours long. Excuse me. Sorry, French. Joel, how about you when it comes to short films and streaming services and that kind of thing?
I think streaming services are a great kind of like final resting home for films, short and long. As I think, you know, the caveat being, as long as the festival culture doesn't disappear. I mean, 2020 and 2021 notwithstanding, you know, if we can still all go to a film festival and see the movie with an audience, you know, that's kind of a magical experience that you can't really replace. And I think for so many people who are making short films, you know, you are kind of building a sort of profile for yourself. And there's a certain type of, prestige and profile that comes from screening to a live audience at a film festival that you can't really replicate on a streaming platform. And I think, you know, even there are, named filmmakers like Wes Anderson or Tom York, who's, usually a musician, but, he has a short film on Netflix that, he's a high profile person. And I still doubt that many people have actually seen the short. So I feel like, putting it kind of just out to a streaming platform, a lot of these things might just wind up getting buried in the massive swarm of content that there is. So streaming can be great as long as the festival thing doesn't go away too, I think. That's kind of my overall feeling.
I do 100% agree with you there, Joel. It is 100% like you do need the word of mouth, collective grouping kind of thing to kind of keep the genre alive. It can get buried in the digital platform for sure. This is for all of you as well. This came through the wire. These are all Canadian films, but how do they fit into the Canadian film landscape? Do you even want to fit into the Canadian film landscape? And so just think about that for a split second, and I'm just going to call on you, Daniel. Sorry.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, I haven't overly thought about that. I don't know. I mean, our film was shot in Spain.
I know. I thought it was tough to go for you first, but why not?
It's a Canadian film. It's about Canadian people, very much tourists abroad. I don't know. I haven't put that into much perspective. I guess like commercial, like you might look at it in a commercial way, where I think in features, that's something you definitely notice is like it's a Canadian production for various reasons. But short films seem to have kind of the freedom to be whatever they want a little more. It doesn't feel like they're necessarily associated as much to being like, oh, this is Canadian or this is an American. But there is to a degree that way too. I
mean, yeah, if your storyline is very much based in Canadiana, and you're like really kind of putting that into the element of the whole film that comes into play. But yours is a Canadian produced film and you were over in Spain and But did you feel like when you were over there, were people like, oh, you're from Canada, this is awesome?
Like the people we talked to and stuff? Yeah. I mean, I think sure, that was definitely our identity. Like we made sure we weren't seen as Americans as much as we could.
100%, yeah. But, just a real quick question before we move on to this, because this just came into my mind as well. When you were over there, how many people said that they've seen people do the exact same thing?
Turns out, like, not. There was some vague knowledge. Like when we were in Burgos, Spain, which is a bigger city, and we're at the big cathedral. And there's a tourist center we went to kind of ask about. We were trying to describe with our like terrible, almost non-existent Spanish, like what we were trying to do, where we were trying to go, and they were quizzical for some time. And I don't remember what it was, but at some point, like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly came up, and they were like, "Oh, like yes, like."
Clint Eastwood.
So so presumably other people had done the same things. So like, yes, I know where to send you. I don't know if they understood why there was an interest necessarily.
Not so much to like recreate it or like shoot a whole movie and all that kind of stuff, but just to go to the site, just to see it. Obviously there was a following behind it and stuff, but
I don't think it was very visited, very popular, but definitely like it seemed like a handful of people at least a year were going or something like that. And enough that they were familiar with it.
God bless that handful. Yeah. Kelly, how about you when it comes to Canadian films, and how does this fit in the Canadian film landscape, or do you want it to fit in that? Do you think it does?
Oh, that's a tough question. So much of what informed that story was like the romantic comedy narrative, which I think is overwhelmingly American, but it's also like the Western mythology of love. And so I was attempting to dismantle that. And I don't know, Canada's just a concept, an illegal occupation built on genocide. Like
100%. Yep.
You know, the industry is ever evolving, and I'm grateful to like be on this land. But as a fitting into the Canadian landscape, I don't know. We as artists have not been given enough opportunities in this country, and that's a damn shame.
It's true. It's very true. We're kind of handcuffed when it comes to getting funding over here to make independent films and stuff. It can be quite hard. when it comes to seeing the film as, yeah, it's a film. Like you said, it's a genre that is inherently kind of is North American. I can see what you're saying is being like Americanized, but yeah, it's Western American, North American kind of develop it. Nathan, how about you when it comes to your film?
Yeah, I mean, I never think about it as whether it's Canadian or not. Most of the ideas I have, but yeah, I guess they're interested in exploring kind of wider thematic and psychological and just all that, things of drama and human life and whatever that are not unique to a Canadian setting per se, even though they may be realized in a unique Canadian setting. And I would say like the Barbershop that, that I had the idea in and that the film is set in, that is a very particularly Canadian space in the sense of that there's a lot of different immigrant communities that are kind of represented in that world. But that's not the first thing I would think about it. To me, that film is about it's a father-son dynamic. It's this connection, disconnection. Like I honestly, the question of whether Canadian content, I'm not going to say it doesn't matter, but I think it's very far from what I'm thinking about when I'm making a film. And I think in terms of like funding opportunities and stuff like that, I definitely would like to see more of an emphasis on like developing talent, for what they can do, and less on kind of the CanCon specific element, because I think that's just going to end up leading us into sort of a facsimile of like, oh, look, it's Canadian, as opposed to like, is this actually something made with skill and passion and, that is worth sharing. So yeah,
it's not just someone holding a baby on the outskirts of a desert, like Saskatchewan road covered in snow and somebody's crying, but then like I always felt like
someone who just
Canadian
produced
film.
a short film in a rural Saskatchewan context. So
all right, here we go.
Actually, yeah.
That's when I was in film school. That's how I always describe Canadian film. Is like, how does it feel to me? It's like, well, it's over dramatic. There's always snow for some reason, and it's always in the prairies, which is not really? Canada. It's a big chunk of Canada, but it was always very much like that's how we kind of like. It was always a lot of Adam McGoyan. And like, like that was like the big element of it. Or Fargo. It's like, is very much you have that kind of vibe, but not as good as Fargo. It's like Fargo light.
And that
was always the problem.
That's the thing. And the thing I would describe that as is the problem is not with the setting. It's not with the Canadianness of the world. It's that it's trying to be something it's not inherently. It's trying to follow an American model. And I think you can see this locally in Vancouver production. You can see this across the country. Whenever Canadian filmmakers try to chase the American model in its outer form and not something that's coming by necessity from the inner spirit of the thing, then that's usually what those works don't end up kind of landing.
100%. It very much just turns into like we're like Americans, but then we have to show the Canadian flag here at this point in this time, and look, we're using Canadian money. It's always like everything kind of seems like kind of force fed to you in certain elements, as opposed to just feeling natural from the moment. And honestly, I'll say this across the board: all of your films, besides Daniel's, because Daniel, you're in another country, but all of your films feel very much like they could be in any country, and very like just of the story that is taking place as opposed to the location that is taking place. And that's kind of where the element of it being also a Canadian film kind of feels great, because it's kind of like it's also a Canadian film, but that's the thing about Canada is we're a melting pot and all of that stuff. Yes, we have a horrible history. Yes, we are terrible, but it's just like we have built up all these stories that can kind of come out of different elements of life, and we don't have to just make it blatantly stamping on it on the face Canada. Now this kind of brings me to you, Joel, being like, yours is very Vancouver. Your film out of all of them is very like, we're going to say names and locations of places and things like that. How do you feel about it when it comes to being Canadian film, and how do you want it to fit in?
Yeah, I was going to cop out and say I've got nothing to add to this conversation. Everything's been said already.
Which is also fair.
Yeah, I mean, I've grown up in Vancouver my whole life. It's where I live and it's where we shot the film, right? So Vancouver is Vancouver in this story, and in Vancouver it rains a lot. and,
but you have to admit that it's never represented as much in short film that gets prestige across Canada than, like, say, Toronto. Like, we're always angry at our older, like, friend or whatever they are. I don't know who they are. To everyone, they're different. They're an older bully. They're an older brother, older sister. Toronto, who has all the money, but Vancouver always kind of gets shoot under the rug a little bit. So, like, standing out as like a truly Vancouver film, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I guess it is. I guess I don't pay too much attention to the city rivalries or the provincial rivalries or anything like that. So
you're on their side or ours? Come on, Joel. The blood oath. No, sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, no. That's it, really. When I wrote the script, I was just like, okay, well, I can rely on Vancouver to be rainy, and of course, the nights that we shot, there was no rain, so we had to kind of rent gear very impromptu on a night of a torrential downpour. And yeah, that was fun.
It's fun. It's got to be cheap to rent rain gear in Vancouver, though.
I mean, we all kind
like
of
rain machines and stuff.
We carried around an umbrella, and that was it.
100%, yeah. So this is going to be the last question. I've already gone way over. I'm sorry, Laurel, and sorry, Jess, everyone. But no, I thank you guys so much. But like, what is next for Cinema Spectacular? What could we do to support the festival moving forward? All right, Laurel's shaking her head. I didn't answer the question right. Hey, what's up?
First of all, I would like to thank you, Bryce, and our lovely panel of filmmakers. This was really fun and really great. I wish it could go on forever.
So do I.
Happen in an hour. What's next for Cinema Spectacular is Cinema Spectacular. Our whole, the main event. This was a really great kind of virtual first step for us, and I really appreciate you all like being there and participating this first time. We've learned a lot of things, and we're really happy to have a lot of support and a lot of filmmakers there to accompany us on this journey. So what's next for us is our main festival, which we still don't have super firm dates for, but sometime in the next 6 weeks for sure. We're currently screening films, and we're excited. We're so excited. And what makes this even more exciting is, as a Canadian-centric festival, we can exhibit nationwide. Like right now, you can watch this in PEI. You can watch this in the Yukon, which is crazy because before I'm like, I'll have to write grants and we'll have to travel there, which is fun and kind of a pipe dream of mine. But having a pandemic excuse to say, this is online and you can watch it from anywhere in Canada is really special and really great. So that's a big kind of step in not a step up, but just like a step out for us. So it's
a broadening. About that.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm allowed to broadcast in Yukon. I would appreciate it if you would have told me that before we started this whole thing. Now they got warrants on me. Now they're going to find me. No, that makes me seem like a bad person, which I'm not. I'm just really bad at jokes. But yeah, no, thank you, Laurel.
Yes, thank you all. And thank you to our supporters and everyone who watched and asked questions. This was great. Thank you.
It's a good time.
Jess, our
thank you guys all.
Sky. So
yeah, exactly. Okay, so I think, are we still live?
We're still live. We're live until I press the button. So
that's cool. We can just be live for a while. It's all good.
Okay. We will officially sign off. Thank you, everyone, so much.
But we can chat here for a little bit.
We can. Let's decompress.
Check out my podcast. My plug. Unabashedly. I don't know. Fuck it. Sorry. Frick it.
Nope. Still live.
Really, my show is not a PG show, so I'm not used to not swearing. So I got one F word in there, and that's okay.
Okay. I'll plug your show, Bryce. Plug your show.
Oh, God damn it. All right. Hi, everyone. Let's watch that film review podcast. I've been doing it for 7 years, and it's not been caught up with. But if you want to come on the show, or you like movies and just want to hear people kind of BS about them for an hour, 2 hours at a time. Check it out. Let's watch that, the film review podcast, anywhere you get your podcasts. If you want to be on the show, you can email me, let'swatchthatpodcast@gmail.com, or find me on Twitter and Instagram at Let's Watch Pod. Boom. That is it. I forgot it until that moment, but it kicks in.